canvassing is something which most people have come across and heard about, but many have not undertaken. The purpose of canvassing is first and foremost to identify your support and then to draw it out on the day of the poll. Now, traditionally, the party organisations used to have activists that went from door to door in election times and would ask people their votes. These would be entered on a register, and on the day of poll, they would then do what we call knocking up. They'd get their activists out to get encourage their pledges to remember it was polling day and to come out and vote. Now, many of you would have seen a person that used to sit in the polling station, used to be called a teller, with a clipboard, often just ticking off and asking for your electoral number. This was so that the party pledges could be identified as turning up to the polling station, and therefore the activists didn't have to spend any more time knocking up or pursuing those particular people who'd already attended. Now, there's a downside to canvassing. It's still practiced widely by the political parties, and actually the organisations still encourage it. However, there are many, many less activists in the political organisations these days, and the electorate, if anything, is growing. It's extremely time-consuming. On average, if you're doing a canvass with maybe 1 or 2 people going door to door, asking people on the doorstep their opinion, you can get through about maybe 20 or 30 pledges in an evening. That is a very, very wasteful use of manpower if you only have a handful of activists in a particular area. The other thing too is a lot of people don't like canvassing. Quite obviously, you're asking people which way they're going to vote. And it turns a lot of people off. And you do find that a percentage of activists will tell you, on the side, quietly, they don't want to canvass. They don't mind leafleting, but they don't want to canvass. So there is a problem with that, and you can't compel people to do it. Apart from that, you've got to be very tight on what you say on the door. If you take too long about it, obviously, or go inside somebody's house, and we all have come across instances where people try to preach to the unconverted, this can actually mess up the whole evening because you could end up spending a lot of time. Now, in terms of canvassing, of course, if you're going to knock up people and you have a lot of pledges, which is difficult to attain, as I've said, for the earlier reason, but if you're going to knock them up, you've got to do it on polling day. Now, you've got to ask yourself, can you really get to, say, 5,000 people all on one day? You may well be able to do so. You may start very early in the morning, but it is extremely manpower intensive, this particular operation. Some people say, well, canvassing isn't necessarily for the purpose of identifying votes, it's for the purpose of actually meeting people and evangelising, if you like, on the doorstep. That's fine again, and I do know one particular MP who does this successfully, although it's really because it's focused on the personality of the Member of Parliament. It's difficult to do that when you're just selling a cause. The other problem you will have there is you will, of course, have a more chatty time when you're doing that sort of evangelism than you will just identifying support. So it will be, again, more time-consuming. Now, another problem that you face, particularly in urban areas, is that a lot of properties, because of the expensive properties, are being subdivided. So you often get houses in multiple occupancy. If you're going to canvass them, it's very difficult to press one of 7 bells, and then when you've seen that person, ring the next bell while you're standing on the doorstep. Actually, canvassing is becoming harder in urban areas because of houses in multiple occupancy. Now, sometimes you get to speak to somebody on the door, but unfortunately, they're not on the electoral roll. Now, again, in places like London, Birmingham, Manchester, the big cities, there is a lot of electoral churn. So you'll find a percentage of those you are successful in seeing are not on the roll. And in the case of the European referendum, you will discover that quite a lot in the cities, maybe of foreign nationals, who won't have a vote in this particular referendum. Another factor too, which has grown over the last few years, is that people are increasingly reticent to open their door to canvassers. Don't ask me why, it's the way the world's gone. It's possible because they think you're either a religious canvasser, they've grown out of the use of seeing political canvassers, and there's a lot of occasions when you go up a garden path, and you'll find the lights are on, and you may even see somebody in that house, and they won't answer the door. In the old days, I think there was a much greater willingness to speak to people about politics. So again, things have changed over a period of time. Now, I'm not trying to pour cold water over the benefits of local campaigning. It's essential that actually we do campaign locally. But if you're going to send out somebody on the doorstep, you've got to make sure that they are the most articulate and best people that you have, and also that they've gone through some degree of rudimentary training on how to do canvassing. Remember, you are the representative of the Leave campaign when you're actually on the doorstep. And that means another thing too, I think specific to this referendum. You've got to remember that you've got to stick to the mainstream arguments in favour of voting Leave in the campaign ahead. There may be many other arguments that you personally hold, some quite mainstream, others maybe a little eccentric, but you are a representative of a team, and of course we don't want to come across as eccentric, but having a strong message that we can all unify and stick to. But it is essential that you practice and you get your best people who are not argumentative, who don't lose their tempers, and who are confident enough to actually pull off canvassing if you're going to do it. So, if you're going to do some canvassing, what would be your principal reason? Well, I think you can say if you've got a strategic purpose in canvassing, for example, identifying poster sites. We all know that it's effective to have posters along major arterial roads. So if you want to do that, you need to actually target those areas and canvass those people, because essentially we're asking them to do something. Likewise, if you have a particularly good area and you just want to encourage Eurosceptic votes are very strong, then again, there may be a purpose to actually what I call spot canvass or target canvass. But the blanket canvass is another matter altogether. If we had the time, if we had the manpower, we could do it across from Land's End to John O'Groats, but we simply don't.
Fantastic, thank you. Can I leave one of these leaflets with you?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, local campaigning is a good thing, so I don't want to discourage anybody from doing that. Think back to the 1990s. One thing I always was impressed about was when the Lib Dems ran in a by-election. They'd turn up with two huge Pantechnicon lorries, they'd unload it with all the printing machines, and before you knew what, they'd inundated the constituency with both leaflets, street stalls, and of course placards coming into the town. They created a whole feeling and ambience around their campaigns, and they made them look local as well. Now obviously they were concentrating on a very narrow constituency canvas, but you can do something on a smaller scale but still as impressive in terms of your activities within your own local area. And you could do this by inundating the area with literature, door to door, and you can of course do street stalls on Saturdays in town centres, and again, as I say, the placards. So you can create that atmosphere that is essential for us to win. The other factor I think that we need to take into account is the limited time that we have in this campaign. It's concentrated. We've only got a few weeks to make sure, well, not so much turn this around, but make sure that we win this. So it has to be very visible to the members of the public. You can get thousands of leaflets out in a very short period of time, and they can go through letterboxes. It may sound old-fashioned, but nonetheless, people do, even briefly, look at them if they're put through their door. But on the whole, you can have a good local campaign and be effective by hitting the largest number of people in your locale quickly and repeatedly. And be prepared to not only leaflet once, twice, or 3 times, but maybe up to 4, 5, 6, 7. Keep on going to polling day. Keep on pushing the line and keep on pounding the pavements.